Hi guys, I'm Laura Vitale, and on this episode of Laura in the Kitchen, we are staying on theme and on trend with our Irish St. Patrick's Day themed inspired recipes, and we are making beef and Guinness pie, which was another huge request, and I'm really happy because I love anything with puff pastry. I like anything beefy, stewy, so this is delicious, and it's very, very, very simple. I feel like it's simple enough that it would be great if you are doing something really low key, but it's also impressive and special enough to serve to guests if you're hosting something fun. So I am making this in my shallow Dutch oven because I am gonna bake this in my shallow Dutch oven. So I love it. It all gets baked in one place and it's beautiful and you love it. It's fantastic. You're gonna need some stew meat. I like to pat it dry because moisture will kill any chance that this beef has to develop good crust and good color. So I'm just gonna season it on one side with some salt and pepper. I'm gonna pop this into my pan once it's nice and hot. But the additional ingredients you're gonna need are very, very simple and very basic. You're gonna need some carrots, onion, celery, garlic, the usual subject for a stew. Then you'll need some mushrooms, diced tomatoes, beef stock, Worcestershire, some Guinness, a little flour. I'm using dry thyme and some dry bay leaves. You could use fresh, of course, some parsley, and puff pastry. So easy peasy. I don't have my oven preheated yet because this needs to cook for a while first. So add the beef in. Whoa, that was a splash. Season the opposite side and then just spread it out into an even layer while the beef creates beautiful flavor and color. I'm gonna chop up some mushrooms. I just bought white button mushrooms because I couldn't find any really beautiful cremini, but I would suggest you use cremini because that'll just give you a bit more flavor. But again, I'm a bargain shopper, so if I see something that's twice the price but looks half as good, not it for me, dog. Not it for me at all. But these looked really beautiful. They were really nice and firm. No weird spots on them, a good size. So I picked those up and I cut them nice and chunky like this because they will absorb all that flavor and give you a really nice, yummy, deep, rich, meaty flavor as well. And then I'm gonna just dice up some celery, onion, garlic, the usual suspects, you know, nothing fancy. I just don't want you to touch that meat until it's developed a really gorgeous crust. Let me check on it, hold on. Let me grab my tongs. Things are looking good. Oh yeah, look at that. That's what I want, that's what I want, not yet. So half of it is gonna be ready to flip, the other half not quite yet. Beef is beautifully browned. I'm adding my celery, carrots, onion, just crank that up a little bit, and I'm gonna add my mushrooms. I'm gonna add everything at once. I'm gonna season them with some salt and pepper, and I'm gonna let them just cook down, develop color, just do all beautiful things over the course of 10 to 15 minutes. I'm not gonna rush it. It's just gonna do its thing. It'll develop a lot of really beautiful flavor. I added just a touch of olive oil to the pan because it felt a little bit dry, but once the veggies start to like release all of their liquid and their water, it will literally pick up all of these beautiful bits from the bottom. So just be patient. In the meantime, I'm just gonna chop up some garlic because I'll add that at the last minute. Look how gorgeous these look, and that is exactly what you want them to look like. I'm gonna add my garlic. You can see how much they've cooked down, right? Oh, and they smell so wonderful. You can see that the mushrooms have kind of soaked up all those beautiful juices. There's nothing stuck at the bottom of the pan anymore. Maybe a little bit over here, but as soon as we add liquid, it's gonna lift those up pretty much right away. Now this is not something you're gonna want to rush because if you rush cooking this, it's not gonna develop the beautiful flavor that it needs to. I'm gonna add a few tablespoons of flour, and I'm just gonna add them to the vegetables and just give them a stir until the flour pretty much gets absorbed into any moisture that remains in the pot, and that's kind of what gives you a thickened stew, right? Because this is what we need here, a thickened sauce, but without it tasting like flour or paste or anything like that. So just work this in for maybe, I'd say, look at that, that took nothing, 30 seconds, but it's certainly worth doing. Time for your Guinness. You're gonna need about, I'd say, 1.5 cups. Add that in. Let me increase the heat just a tiny, tiny bit. Add that in. Once that starts to bubble and reduce, then we're gonna add the remaining liquid. That's what you want it to look like. Now we're gonna add the stock and some diced tomatoes. It looks like a lot, and it is, but this is all gonna cook down really nicely. Your bay and thyme, a splash of Worcestershire. Beautiful, beautiful. Adding the beef back in. As the beef cooks, we're gonna kind of shred it up a little bit so that it disperses throughout the whole pie really nicely, and you don't have these just giant chunks. It'll fall apart. And all you're gonna do now at this point is just bring this to a boil, and then I'm just gonna lower it to like low and let it simmer it for a couple of hours until that meat is like super fall aparty and very tender. Look how gorgeous this looks. I let it cook for about 2.5 hours. The meat is fall apart tender. I've let it cool a bit. I'm sprinkling it with some parsley. I've let it cool a bit because I don't want to put puff pastry on something really hot because otherwise it's just going to melt into a mess. So I had my oven preheated at this point to 375. I've got a sheet of puff pastry. I might need to do 1.5 sheets just because I am doing it on a round pan. As you can see, let me just grab a knife. I'm doing it on a round pan, so I'm going to need a little bit more. And the good thing about puff pastry, you can kind of just pinch the seams together and everything will work out just fine. So I'm just going to do one of these, and then I'm just going to, see, you press, it looks like it's not going to work, but it does. And then you just take a rolling pin and you just work with it to kind of smooth it out into one somewhat circle, rectangle. And if it doesn't stick that well, just take a little egg wash because you're going to need it anyway. And there you go, edible glue. Take your pastry. We can cut off the excess, so I'm not terribly concerned. Just take your sharp knife, go on top like so, and then tuck it all in there like that. Just gonna cut a little slit in the center for the air to escape. Take some egg wash, which is just 1 egg beaten with a tablespoon of milk, cream, or water, whichever you prefer, and then just brush it evenly all over the top. Sprinkle with a little salt, a little pepper, because remember, puff pastry can go either sweet or savory. So if this was something sweet, I would top it with a little bit of sugar, but because it's salty, it's savory. I'm doing a little salt, a little pepper, and a little dry thyme. You could do fresh thyme if you wanted to. Oven is preheated. It's going to pop this in 25-30 minutes. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done, and then we'll be ready to dig in. How gorgeous is this? You bring this to the table bubbling around the edges with a nice crispy crust, and you're gonna be, I mean, honestly, what a rock star, okay? Like I said, it smells so fantastic, and it is the perfect thing to make for a cozy dinner, but also super impressive, right? A little more fresh parsley on top, a fresh Guinness on the side if you fancy, and it's pretty perfect. It looked really brothy and like soupy when we added all the liquid, but look how nice that thickened up, right? Gorgeous. I'm gonna get a piece of this meat first because it is literally falling apart tender. And y'all, it's so hot. Just know that in my oven, it took about 30 minutes. So, you know, ovens do vary. So just keep an eye out. You don't want to overcook it, and you certainly don't want to underbake it. But this is going to be hot, so give me a minute. So good. So hot. I mean, you heard the crunch of that pastry. It is not messing around. Go to laurainthekitchen.com to get the written recipe. Hope you enjoy spending time with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.